After break. That's good. Good afternoon, everyone. All right, we're getting there. We're getting there. I'm Doug. I'm now, and this is going to sound like a total personal boast, but bear with me. I'm now Vice President of Data at Media.Monks, which sounds great, but for me it means they don't let me do code anymore. they don't let me play. No, I'm what they call tech adjacent, which means basically that's a challenge to turn up to Measure Camp and have something to talk about and present. It's going to be interesting because I remember. When did Peter say the first one was? 2012, something like that? I remember being at that first one in London and turning up with all kinds of wonderful, interesting technical things to show off. So now what I've got is, it looks like side projects, it looks like parlor tricks, but actually it's hopefully something that's kind of interesting, or a few things that are kind of interesting that are going to help you think about how we use tech that's at our fingertips so we can actually solve a whole load of other things. So what I'm presenting here is an idea of how I've brought together a whole bunch of different things to solve this use case, but you can use these in a number of different areas. So I want to hear your response here. Who wants to see something cool? Oh, I love this. This is good. This is good. Raise hands. I'll take that. So we're going to talk about something that's been around the discussion groups in the industry, something called data contracts. Okay, so if I click, please work. I have to be close to the machine. There we go. Never mind. It's born of frustration, delight and frustration with Looker Studio. If I call it Data Studio in the next half an hour, don't sue me. I will get it wrong. It's Looker Studio. It's great. Okay. Who is a Looker or formerly Data Studio user in the audience? Quite a lot. See, this is it. It's grown. It's easy. It's well positioned. But there's a downside to this as well, in that it's become, and I'm sure you'd agree, a bit of a chaotic burden. So you go into a large corporate, your own or a client's, and you'll be faced with a lot of different visualizations to use, to play with. And who owns what? Same goes with the data sources as well. This is actually probably worse. The state of play with regards to how they're organised, or rather not organised. So the range of data sources that we have to play with, it's totally ungoverned. Yeah, it lacks any sort of ownership. Who owns what? Who's created what? If we were to audit access to the data, that would be really, really hard because it's so chaotic, it's unknown, it's not governed. And because it's not governed, it's very, very hard to manage all of these data sources and all of these data visualizations reliably. Yeah, we can't do it. We can't ensure consistency across all of the data sources. This is all really quite hard. But I've got a screen that comes back. A solution in terms of something that we have already at our fingertips. Now, I'm not claiming credit for this idea, for this notion at all. Okay, Kanani, I don't know whether you guys know this chap, but he is a Looker Studio expert, probably the expert. I will be sharing the slides, so you don't need to go take a picture or look at the link or explore the link. But when you do get the slides, do go sign up to his newsletter. Very, very good. But what we've got here is Google Workspace admin logs contain every single action that happens on a Looker Studio data source or report in the organization. And we can export these from Workspace admin into BigQuery and do cool things with them. This is one cool thing that we can do. There are many more. So this is what you're essentially getting out of the Google Workspace logs. So we can say who did what to what was the connector, data export, where did they do it from, what was the actual event, the value that changed, who owns it, whether the Looker Studio asset was visible and so on and so on. Really, really cool data that we haven't had previously. Yeah, sure, we could connect the Looker Studio report to a GA4 data source, but we couldn't say who was doing stuff. We could say things were happening, but we didn't have to an IP address or to an email login level of detail to say who was doing what, who was creating new stuff, who was changing things, and who was accessing the data. So now we have that ability. Thing is, word of caution with these workspace admin logs, you will get to see a lot of potentially sensitive data. So whoever gets access to the workspace admin logs is going to be quite high-end super user. So we need to build a workflow around this to democratize that data in a safe manner. So as we're using dashboards, Looker or Looker Studio, these natively will generate events that will land in the workspace logs. We can export these on a regular basis into BigQuery raw and use a scheduler to shape these logs into a format that we can then further visualize or further work on. Okay, so that's how we can safely expose that data in a production-ready, usable format. Pretty straightforward so far. We've got an automated Looker Studio library. Now we can say, in our entire organization, what are all of the Data Studio reports, Looker Studio reports, thanks for picking me up on that, all the data sources and the metadata that goes with them. So already, we're a big step ahead in terms of getting governance, ownership, and control over our Looker Studio assets. That's a big thing. There's more. So we've got assets, actors, and the analytics. That's a really key thing. You spend so much time putting these data visualizations together. I don't know who's actually using them, who's getting value from them, who's sharing them, with who, for what reason. That's stuff we can learn from. Okay, so think about what's actually in these reports. Fundamentals. We go to our manage or our resources. We can see the data sources associated with our report, blends, segments, filters. These are all pretty fundamental key parts of the Looker Studio report. But if we go down even deeper to a data source level, like I say, this is where there's a much bigger playing field for doing cool and interesting stuff. What is it? 23 Google connectors at this moment in time. 719 partner connectors for all the third-party data. There's a lot going on in there. There's a lot of potential variety and chaos in terms of what these reports contain and what they can connect to. And if we're being honest about our use of data, then we need to have that level of understanding, control, and governance over what is being visualized by who. There's a lot going on in there. So within each data source then, we've got what data is used, what's expected, across the dimensions, metrics, segments, and filters. This is where we start to get into the notion of a contract. Okay, so not only are we taking a record so that we understand what's being used, we're taking a record to say, this is what the data visualization expects. This is what the standards are. This is where we can apply governance, control, and almost, if you like, continuous end-to-end, continuous development and integration, CDCI, for data visualization. So if it changes on one end in the data structure in BigQuery, we can say how that change is going to manifest throughout all the other stakeholders that use that piece of data via this contract, even down to query details level. Okay, so let's imagine. Okay, we've got these data sources now. We've got an idea of what's in the logs, what we want to do with it. What if these actually were self-documenting? Because I've already said there's a lot of Looker Studio, a lot of assets in the organization. That number's going to grow. We don't want to be doing this by hand. That's boring, first off, and it's going to be erroneous at best. What if they were not only self-documenting, but also still human readable, so that we can better share the visualization assets that we've got within an organization? So we've got a machine to manage and apply governance, but humans to self-serve on the analytics. It's a nice sweet mix there. So this is what we've got with what I'm calling automated data contracts for Looker Studio dashboards. This is a little bit of proprietary Media.Monks technology. Actually, it's a cool, cute piece of app script that connects what's in Google Slides with what's in Google Sheets, and then repopulating what's in Slides. But this is automatable. Live demo. Who wants to see a live demo? How many live demos have we had today? Not enough. Who's brave? Hi, brave! I think in Finland this is what's called sisu. Correct me if I'm wrong. That's the limit of my Finnish vocabulary for the day. All right, here we go. Yes, so yeah, this is part of the live demo. It's not just a naked slide deck. What I'm going to do is start with the human readable version, the template. what I'm going to do is add in, using standard notation, a placeholder. This is where I'm going to have, let's call it report title, put it into context. And here we'll have, I don't know, we'll call it data source, okay? So imagine that with more detail, with more slides, nicely formatted. It's a human readable version that describes and summarizes what's in the Visual Studio report, so that I can say, yes, that's the one I want to answer my business question. You get the idea. If I then say that URL, copy that. And I want to make this so that it's a reusable, automatable asset that will scale, and I never have to touch this again with my own human hands. Okay? I don't want that one. Here we go. No. Such a live demo, I'm starting from sheet.new. Okay, cool. So I'm going to make this a little bit more easy to read. And I'll go to my extensions, and here I have sheets to slides. Okay? If I set this up, and I say, there's the URL of my slides template that I just copied. I go, okay. Has a little word, jolly good. And the script has looked at the placeholders that I put in my template. There's report title, there's data source. Okay? So if I put in, imagine then I've connected this to my workspace, Google Workspace logs, productionized data, and I have a report that's been produced called Media.Monks test, and the data source is going to be data monks test. Okay? So I'm then going to imagine that has not been typed in by me. Imagine that has come automatically from a scheduled query. And it's a new row, so we're going to say yes, I want to process this. I'm going to say in my sheets to slides, I'm going to run that. That then looks at my template, looks at the data I have in my row here, and automatically generates the human readable version. This is a machine readable version. This is exportable as a CSV. We can use this to match what is expected against what we have per report, per data source, and make sure that we have a new Looker Studio asset that conforms to standards, and we understand who's actually going to use it. Then I have this result here that is populated, so this is now the beautiful human readable version. And therefore we can do this repeatedly at scale. Okay? So there is the classic notion of a measure count parlor trick that actually worked, thanks to the Finnish Wi-Fi. That was pretty amazing. I actually got through to that. Hats off to the organisers. So there we go. So there's cool things are we can connect sheets to slides from BQ, have that automatically populated from Google Workspace logs, and get way better governance than we had previously. So there we go. We've got our data contract. It's a human readable summary template. That's a prettier version than my straw man that I just showed you. Got data source template, where we could include the query, we can include the data source type, the dimensions, the metrics, all the details around that. There's our template populated. And I saw this, and I thought, no, we can do this as a live demo, and by Jove, we have done it as a live demo. And we can produce a data contract with a human readable deck. Then we have our links to, from our Looker Studio report summary, links to all the other data sources that we're using within that report, and it all fits together quite nicely. So what do we have now? A visualization library. We've got a data dictionary, essentially what dimensions and metrics are being used, what's being pulled from BigQuery, what's being pulled from which analytics resources. We can really understand how these assets are being used strategically. What is the actual value? We're seeing that now because what's being activated and what's appearing in the analytics, we can start to see and demonstrate what Looker Studio visualizations are actually being used. Now we know this, we can apply governance to this. We can manage access. We can make sure we haven't got nefarious third and fourth party operators using our data and looking at our data. It's auditable. And because we have a set of standards according to our data dictionary, then it's easy to maintain, and it's automated as well. This will scale really well. So this is quite a short one. We're going to have a good Q&A hopefully. A little bit of wrap up. So we've got a record. We've got a library of our assets, and we can do bulk management. It's auditable in terms of who's creating what, deciding on the ownership, the access and the governance, and it's very manageable. And right now, this is really, really important, this manageability, this the importance of creating a data dictionary, because a lot of clients or a lot of organizations are going through a migration from GA360, Looker Studio on top of GA360, or Looker Studio on top of BigQuery from GA360. We're translating those into the GA4 version. That's quite a big job, because we want to know, hopefully, automatically, what data sources are being used, which dimensions, which metrics, what to migrate, which queries are used. Indeed, do we need to migrate everything from GA360 to GA4? Well, it's better that we know what Looker Studio reports were being used. If none of them are being used, why bother translating them? Save yourself some work. I'm going to say any questions at this point, but I've got to make sure you know that there will be a demonstrative blog post on this coming soon. Once I have all the details ironed out, there'll be essentially another live demo, GitHub resource, all the code, all the query, all the examples, all the templates you want to use. I'll blog this, put this up there in the true Measure Camp spirit. So that's the very quick one. I'm open to Q&A.